Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Mexico, so it's my first Mexican craft beer review for you in quite some time, over a year I think it is. So for this one we are going to go to Cerveceria Mexicana and actually have a taste of a beer that I think would be my first craft beer that I've ever tried from Mexico. So this guy comes from the Cerveza de los Muertos range, or Day of the Dead beer from Cerveceria Mexicana, and have a taste of their blonde ale, which is called Death Rides a Pale Horse. So it should be a pretty damn cool review for you to do. I've always wanted to try some Mexican craft beer, and hopefully this is the first of many Mexican craft beer reviews for you to come. So as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very kind of brief history of the company. It will only be a minute or two, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to the other reviews that hopefully I can add from these guys in the fairly near future. So anyway, the Day of the Dead beer, or the Cerveza de los Muertos, is brewed at Cerveceria Mexicana in Tecate in Mexico, and the brewery is only located 100 yards away from the US border. But the predecessor brewery, or the former name of the brewery, was actually Cerveceria Mexicali, and this was founded in 1923, and it was actually the first industrial brewery to be located in Baja California. So Mexicana is the only large brewery in Mexico that is wholly owned and are wholly owned by Mexicans. So a lot of the other breweries you get in Mexico are actually owned by the likes of Anheuser-Busch or InBev, or one of these big kind of conglomerate companies. So it's quite cool with this beer that you get something that is wholly Mexican owned. But it's the third largest brewery in Mexico, and it has the capacity to brew 100,000 barrels of beer per year, and they're known most for their Mexicali beer brand, if you like. That's quite a big sort of macro beer that they drink down in Mexico, from what I believe. I've never been to Mexico when I've been old enough to appreciate it, so hopefully I can actually go back and see it now that I'm a little bit older. So anyway, to tell you about the Day of the Dead craft beer, or Cerveza de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead craft beer range was officially launched on the 30th of September in 2013 at the NBWA conference in Las Vegas in Nevada, and apparently the brewery expanded its capacity by 35% in preparation for the launch of the brand. And the company, as you can probably tell by the cool labels on these beers, they actually worked very hard at their branding to celebrate the Day of the Dead, which is a 3,000-year-old Aztec kind of festival, if you like. So it's quite cool to see them with this really cool artwork. I always love that with beers and with metal albums and things. When you get cool artwork, you can really appreciate it. But in the beginning they actually had a total of 40 different recipes, and they managed to whittle it down to just 6 for the final beers, and now they actually export their beers to most of the states in America. I think it's about 32 they said they did, and they are exporting to about 30 different countries worldwide now as well. So since its launch just about 2 years ago now, I believe it is, they've actually grown quite substantially, and the beer is fairly popular. And they said that they really wanted to prove that you could get good craft beer from Mexico, so hopefully they've done that with these. This is the very first time I'm actually trying a Mexican craft beer, so hopefully it doesn't disappoint, but I'm sure it won't. So anyway, just to list the other beers you can get from Cerveceria Mexicana, and apologies if my Spanish pronunciations are a little bit wrong there, but the beers from this brewery include the Amber Ale, the Pale Ale, IPA, Hefeweizen, Blonde Ale, Porter, and also Chocolatl Stout, but they all have different names, for example like Death Rides a Pale Horse, and you can go on the brewery website and check those out for yourself. But that's the different styles of beer that you do get from these guys. So to tell you about this beer itself, I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the artwork of this one. Just let me make sure that you are seeing that right. So as you can see, there's a nice kind of zombie woman, or a woman painted with the kind of zombie colours there. It actually reminds me of one of the James Bond films. I forget what one it is, but there's the guy made of China, and they keep shooting him up. I forget which one it is. It's a Roger Moore Bond film, but it reminds me a little bit of that. I remember that Bond villain. But as you can see, Blonde Ale, Death Rides a Pale Horse. This is the top label. This is the Cerveza de los Muertos symbol, and this is also on the bottle cap. So this is actually one of the nicest, one of the coolest bottle caps I've seen with a skull on it. Looks really, really cool. So I'll definitely be trying to keep I'll steam the label off this bottle and keep the bottle cap and stuff. That's really quite cool. But to tell you about this beer itself, just before we open it, it's a 5.6% blonde ale, and it's hopped with Peril and Hallertau hops, and it has a malt base of two-row, caramel and Vienna malts. So without further ado, let's get this guy open, and it is a twist cap. So let's just see if we can get this open. I'll probably need to put my sleeve down for this so I can grip it properly. There we are. So as you can see, I can just take the top off, a nice little smoky opening on it there, and we'll just get it out and into the glass. and as you can see, it's pouring a really beautiful kind of bright goldeny amber colour. It looks very, very rich. A blonde ale. Normally I'd expect it to be a little less orangey amber than that. I'd expect it to be a bit more kind of bright goldeny straw, but colour doesn't really matter. It's more the taste of the beer you're interested in. But I'll bring up the light and just let you see the exact colour of this. If I put my fingers behind it, first thing you'll notice is that it is transparent, although the camera doesn't show it too well. You've got a finger of frothy head on there. It's creamy coloured rather than white, although it looks white to you in the camera, but it is creamy. There's some big bubbles just sticking around the side of the glass there, but some little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head there, so it looks really, really nice. But yeah, really awesome looking beer actually. So without further ado, let's actually give this guy a smell and just see how we get on with it. It actually smells just like a lager beer. It doesn't really smell like an ale, to be honest. It smells like a kind of macro lager, but you've got some pale malt in there, a little bit of the kind of corny sweetness that you get from that. That's why I say it smells like a lager beer, but it is a little bit more complex than that. So you've got definite pale malts in there. You can pick up a little bit of the breadiness, and there's a definite kind of caramel presence, but that's mixing in with a sort of corny smell. And definitely there's some cereal in here too. But you can pick out a definite kind of grassy, slightly floral and aromatic hop in here. There's a little bit of citrusy element coming out of it too, but it really does smell, it actually smells like a macro lager beer. It doesn't smell too much like an ale, but the reason it is because you've got that kind of corny, that sweet corny smell on it. It doesn't smell like a blonde ale that I've had before actually. But the aroma isn't too important, so we'll give it a taste and see how we get on. But as I always say, just take in a little bit of the aromas that come out your beer. But to me this smells kind of quite like a sort of macro lager beer. But without further ado, let's give this guy a taste. So this is Death Rides a Pale Horse Blonde Ale from Cerveceria Mexicana de Cerveza de los Muertos. Slange. Now it tastes more like an ale. While I said it smells like a macro lager, it does actually taste more like an ale. Yeah, it's actually very smooth. That's the first thing you'll notice about this beer. First impression I have of it is that it is quite smooth. But yeah, you've got quite a pale malt base under there. A nice kind of big bready malt that just blankets the tongue, but it's quite a pale malt base at the same time. But you've got a lingering kind of slightly caramel, maybe slightly biscuity sweetness, and that just goes right down the middle of the tongue there. But you've got a nice kind of sweetness to this beer. It doesn't taste like the typical kind of corn, if you like, that you get from macro lagers. That's why I say it tastes a bit more like an ale. And I think there has been a bit of debate over whether these beers are craft beers or whether they're really macro beers. But there's a definite kind of cereal spice to this beer as well. So it's quite, you've got, as I say, you've got a nice pale malt base, but a bit of a kind of thicker bready element to it. That just blankets the middle of the palate, and then you've got some nice kind of caramelly and slightly biscuity sweetness just building its way on top of that. But as you move towards the edge of the tongue, you get just a little bit of a kind of cereal spice character out of it. So it's actually quite a nice and quite enjoyable beer. I've always liked the Mexican beers, and maybe that kind of sweetness, that the type of sweetness that you get out of this beer is a bit of a trait in Mexican beers. It's probably just to kind of suit the taste of people down there. But yeah, no, it's a nice, very smooth and quite drinkable beer actually. Around the edges of the tongue you're getting the more hoppy flavours coming out, so it's mainly a kind of that sort of mild grassy hop, if you like, with a little bit of citrus. You'll notice a little bubble move towards the front of your tongue as you're drinking this beer, and that's where a little bit of the kind of lemony citrus flavours are coming out. There's perhaps just a little bit of kind of slightly floral and aromatic character around that moves towards the back edges of the tongue there, and it just kind of mixes with that sort of cereal spice. It almost gives the feel of a little bit of earthy hop character coming out of this beer. Yeah, there's a definite cereal presence in this beer. You get just a little bit of lemony citrus moves towards the front of the tongue, then a lemony and citrusy grassy hop around the kind of front arch of the tongue, a little bit of floral and aromatic character as you move further back, and then perhaps just a little bit of earthy character, but both of those mixed with the kind of cereal character that you get from the malt base. And as I say, a bit of a kind of bready blanket there with a little bit of biscuity and sort of biscuity and caramel sweetness in there. That's probably the kind of that'll be the caramel malt, but the sort of bready element you're getting from it is definitely the Vienna malt. You notice that in Vienna Gold beers and Vienna Helles and things like that. But the malt base and the way the flavours blend together in this beer is really nice, I would say. But in terms of the mouthfeel, I'd say it's more light-bodied. It is pushing towards being a little bit more mid-bodied, I would say. The carbonation is kind of moderate. It does have a little prickle to it, but it smooths the beer out quite well. It's got a nice wet, slightly oily mouthfeel to it. And in the aftertaste, you've got a little bit of a kind of dry character just coming from the hops, just around the edge of the tongue there. But you do get a little bit of dryness. It's a kind of cereally, slightly earthy character that's in the aftertaste of this one, but you've got a dry bit from the hoppy character around the edge of the tongue, and some nice kind of wet malty sweetness just lying in there. So you've got a good mix of sweet character and a good bit of dry character, and there's a very good balance between it, but a nice light bodied, lightly carbonated, slightly oily beer. So overall, this is quite an interesting first take on my Mexican craft beers. It's not as big in flavour as some of the American craft beers, if you like. I'd be really tempted to try some of the other styles that this brewery do. This guy is obviously designed to be a bit more tasty than some of the Mexican macro beers, if you like. So it's a beer that if you want a bit more taste for a kind of nice hot day, this is what it kind of suits. But it's probably, I would be willing to say that it's probably not the most flavourful beer that you'll get from Mexico, and maybe even not from this brewery actually. So have a little look at the beers that this brewery do, and just and pick out one that you really quite like. The beer's nice and drinkable. I always like the Mexican beers for the malt base, and I think that's a really important thing. So it's a good beer for drinking on a kind of nice hot summer's day. So if you're in the north of Mexico or in California or wherever, it's a good beer for a hot day. But I would be tempted to try a few more from the brewery and see if there are better beers in their range. But it's nice and it's drinkable, so if you do quite like that Mexican beer, like the Modelo Especial actually is probably the same kind of feel as this, but this guy has a good bit more flavour. So if you want a more flavourful sort of Modelo beer, then give this guy a go. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my return to Mexico. It's been cool to review my first Mexican craft beer. To my Mexican viewers, I will ask you, please recommend a few more Mexican craft breweries for me to have a look at. It might be a little bit difficult for me to get the beers in Europe, but I really would love to review a few more Mexican beers. But I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. As always, let me know in the comments section below your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it, and as always, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I hope I will catch you soon with my next beer review, and there will hopefully be more Mexican ones. Cheers!